What makes a website award-winning? Let's explore 5 recent winners, each from a different platform, and after a quick look at all 5, we'll dive deeper into the features and principles that made these sites successful. The first website won the Art Directors Club of Europe award, as well as a bunch of other awards, it appears here. And this is telling the story of the Portuguese colonial war, where thousands of Africans fought alongside the Portuguese armed forces. I guess they were part of the Portuguese Empire at that time, and this gives the chance for these soldiers to tell their story. Now, I'm going to go through these 5 sites without too much comment on the design itself. I want you to take that in, see the things that you notice as we move through these 5 sites. Then we're going to talk about the common features or the things that elevate them and the things that make them award-winning. So we just have a bit of a look at these and a sense of what they do. As I roll over at the bottom here, we get this full screen changing viewport for all these different sections rather than just a button rollover, which is interesting. The second site in question is for Lucyon, and they build interactive digital products, web experiences, and they're an agency in Bristol in the southwest of the UK, and this won the Favorite Website Awards Website of the Year for 2023. And we have these 3D blocks that are animating. These are actually things that I can play with and I can move around. The physics is really nice here. And this is another one that we're invited to scroll to explore. The show reel is moving into full screen. You can click to play this video if you wish. Then we have some case studies here in 2 columns, 6 case studies. Or we can go to see all the projects. And this gives a sense of what they do on their homepage. This astronaut is now, I've got my hands off, is taking over the page and falling through this void. And this is definitely giving me a sense of what this agency is about, their capabilities, the things that they can do. If this is what you are looking for, then you already feel like these are the guys for you. Let's work together. And that is a great ask at the end of that demonstration of their capabilities. The next site is called Second Sea, and this won a D&AD award in 2023. That's one of the most prestigious design awards to get a pencil. And this is again an interactive site. Really striking how simple and graphical this is, with just blue, this one solid blue and black and white, one font in all caps. And this is to do with rising sea levels. And if we go through here, we can actually interact. So we can choose a city, say Singapore, and then let's choose a year, 2094, 70 years from today. And then you can choose a level, like how much the sea level is going to rise based on temperature rising. Let's go for the one in the middle. And then it will automatically calculate for you the amount of damage that will do. So it says this sea level rise is going to cause $550 million worth of damages, and you can move and drag to see by different years as we go further into the future how much that's going to cost. You move to the next panel, it then gives you a sense of that money. $582 million is equivalent of, and it starts to add it up. Staying at a night in a Vegas suite. And then we've got things like seawall defense, Jeff Bezos increasing net worth per hour. Cost of hosting Eurovision, $50 million. That's the bit. Cost to run COP. Cristiano Ronaldo's income. Love it. And so we kind of roll through this thing, and then we get a little receipt, which apparently says the United States owe them $146 million. And you can then be invited to share this on social media. The next site, number 4, is for KPR, and this won one of the Site of the Years with awards. And this is a brand that focuses on collective narrative and empowering storytellers. It's some sort of fictional world here that we have. As we scroll through, we see these sort of animated characters living in these different spaces. You can see on this recording there's a thin key line that delineates this grid here. digital collectibles. And we're encouraged to click and hold here. And as it animates through these different panels as they move around. This feels like super Minority Report style interface, the way things play over the top. That's probably quite an old movie now, isn't it? I'm showing my age. Really interesting depth on display here. I think you get a sense of this site and what that's about. And the final site is called Design Threads, and this won a Webby Award in 2023, and this is a report on the state of design today. Let's see what you designers think about this. Straight away, we've got this really simple editorial looking layout and very good typesetting on display, good use of negative space, the columns, the typefaces that are used. And we've moved through and we've got these sort of posters that head this first thread, the tyranny of taste, and we can actually click and refresh and it brings us up all these different styles. Go on, Comic Sans. Really interesting, fun little layout here. And it very much feels like a report. We've kind of got some breaking apart here of all my favorite books. This challenge here that perhaps design is a little bit Eurocentric when it comes to deciding what's good, and I think that's is really helpful here. This person saying there was no Brazilian references in my classes, so yeah, let's allow a little bit more variety and variation and expression when it comes to design. This is an interactive element. I think I voted on this earlier. Pretty even split here between tradition and trend when it comes to design. And we're just having this layout move around, but it very much feels like a report. It feels like something that we should spend time reading as well as interacting with. So that's the first thing I think that's common across this site, interactions. So I want us to go back through them now and think about just that lens of interactions as we look at them. So with the Lucian site, that was particularly prominent. I really was encouraged to play around, and there's links in the description to these sites, with this 3D model here because the physics of it felt really nice. And I wanted to scroll because as I scroll, I saw things begin to carry on moving bit by bit. Even just, you know, as we roll over, we get this little wobble and blur onto each of these case studies. The rollovers on the buttons, everything just has a little bit of movement to it, a little bit of just flair that comes in to this interaction. Similarly with Second Sea, I mean, this is a super interactive website because it was a case of actually choosing which city we wanted to consider, choose the year, choose this RCP level. And so as we moved through, we very much felt in control of what was happening, like we were responding, we were creating. Even on the Design Threads site, there was that element of voting on these different polls. On the KPR site, we had these elements where we would click and drag or click and hold, and we would have these different sort of animations that were going on at that point. And they were giving us this information in this way, but if we let go, the thing stopped playing through. So we were just brought into it that bit more. Interactions were making it a more engaging experience for the viewer. The second thing is transitions, and this is really true on this site. I mean, even if I just refresh it, give a chance for it to load, and straight from the loading screen, we have a transition. The visual style is established. Some of the graphic language comes through. But as we scroll, we have these lovely transitions. Things are masked out with these unique shapes. It's not just a rectangle, but the visual language with these little tab on the shapes is repeated all the way through. And then we have the transitions where things spin and it makes it feel more 3D. It gives us a sense of depth. Obviously a website is flat, it's on the screen, but because these things are moving, even the perspective in the image changing as we move the mouse or scroll, and then these panels moving over the top of the type and changing the angle, we have a real sense of depth there. There was transitions on the Portugal site too. The transitions on the Lucian site were particularly pronounced, like the astronaut that appears to just be, you know, playing within this iPad, but as we scroll, it moves into a full screen and we have them falling into the void before we're invited to continue to scroll at the end and pick up the contact details of the agency. The fact that it breaks out again then of the screen, just really clever, elegant transitions. Even on Second Sea, there are these transitions as we go through the different pages. If I go back again and then click forward, that just things moving upwards in the sense of the sea level moving up and down. The transitions can really just help something feel more interesting as we move through and more elegant. Even here on the design threads, which is very simple, as we scroll to another section, it animates in it and then it moves upwards subtly. And just those little things here encourage us to take things in panel by panel. The next element there is sequencing. As we move through the site, we have things change when it comes to the layout. So we have a video here that is in the center with this on this red field. We skip the intro. We then, as we move through, we go to a photograph which is full screen, and then back to this large headline with the type at the bottom. Then another photograph, back to the headline. So just breaking this up a little bit just adds some interest to it. On the Lucian site, if we go to one of their other pages like About Us, and we'll see if these principles are in play here. As we scroll, we're getting a sense of a transition, but also this sequencing here as we move through, because right now we've got this sort of radial alignment with things around this astronaut who's in the very center. But then as we continue to scroll, the alignment changes to this asymmetrical style here. We move to more of a grid here with these sort of holographic representations of the team. On the KPR site, we've very much had this sequencing going on, where we had this one layout where it was a full screen image in the background. Then we moved to this grid type layout where our eye is drawn around the layout. Then we go back to a full screen. And similarly with the design threads, we have these full screen poster style images. Then we have, you know, the plain text next to an image with negative space around it. Then these full horizontal lines. So there's just a sense of the layout changing, the layout moving around. It's not type on the left, images on the right, all the way down. The sequencing adds visual interest, and it lets us know we're progressing as we move through, encourages us to keep going and learn the story. And the final thing that I've noticed with all these sites that really makes them work, great graphic design. And this may seem completely obvious. It's like, well, of course, an award-winning website is going to have good graphic design. But actually, the fundamentals are just adhered to so well on these sites. That's what makes them really work. And yes, things like interactions and transitions, they give it that little bit of sparkle. But fundamentally, everything has to be right. The aesthetic really works on this site. About the colonial war. We have the colours of the Portuguese flag, green, red and yellow with just black and white. And that's used in a very graphical way with solid colours all the way through. There's a consistent design language where we have these very simple forms, this very simplified, stylized soldier, this very, very rudimentary typeface using all these sharp angles. And these rectangles with the hard edges are used all the way through, and it kind of marries with, you know, the harshness and the very, you know, rawness of the subject matter as well that is going on here. On the Lucian site, if we go back to their homepage, just making sure that everything has good negative space around it. We've got a good use of scale here, another important graphic design principle. Huge headline that looks particularly big because it's relative to the size of the body copy that's here. Things are nicely aligned, the buttons properly aligned, there's enough padding around it, the type is set properly. We're able to read things, you know, as we go through. Second C, even though it's very, very simple, sticking to using a good font, making sure there's proper contrast, making use of alignment, these things make it work and still make it beautiful as an aesthetic, even though it's super simple. The KPR site does a really good job of letting everything feel like it's in a proper place, because it uses this grid, so it aligns things that everything is grouped together. It belongs. This small type belongs with this huge headline. This small type is a caption for this rotating crystal that is there. And we just have this nice sense of scale, very, very small type for the navigation, and that makes everything else feel like it's at the right kind of size. Things are well balanced. Even when we move through these animated portions, every single frame is balanced within it. So there's someone who's got a real grasp of fundamentals of graphic design. Even though this is a bit looser, this taste website, still things are there in a deliberate place. The type is aligned properly to the left of this box. The typesetting is excellent, good measure, good leading. So it makes it easy for us to read, and they've made good choices about the typefaces that they're using. They've used negative space appropriately to lead us towards this headline and byline. So having those fundamentals about good design and just making sure that, you know, everything is balanced, everything looks right, everything has the right sort of spacing around it, and just getting those fundamentals right is the baseline, is what we need for something to feel really elegant. And then to make that site award winning, to give it that push over the edge, it's just working on your transitions and your interactions, introducing those things subtly in a way that delights the viewer and encourages them to hang around. Which aspects of these websites particularly stood out to you? Let us know down in the comments, and there's links to each of the sites in the description. Until next time, happy designing.